That's too much information for the one day, and we can continue on. I forgot that a lot of people are going to listen to this.
This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast.
Yes, MK. He's actually working in my kitchen. He is barefoot and pregnant. No, he's at his normal job. But yeah, we moved this recording to today because there was a SpoilerCon meeting yesterday, and Gus had work, and schedules are hard. So we're recording on a Wednesday, which is when Seth works. But Seth wasn't going to be on this recording anyway, so that's okay. Which I guess is my cue to start rolling us into the actual content of why we're here today. Yeah, today we are doing that chapter.
Yay!
The Festival of Birds. Perhaps one of the most controversial and rage-inducing chapters in the entire Wheel of Time series. Certainly the one that generates the most controversy. The event spans chapters ahead and behind. We will be talking about this more in the future. We have talked about it a lot in the past, but today is the actual event of the Festival of Birds. Yeah.
People can't necessarily see Aradia's Zoom background right now, but it's a bird mask, which is very appropriate.
I have a I can actually upload the picture because it's pretty neat. I believe Google told me that it is, a Colombian fully feathered mask.
It's beautiful and appropriate.
Yeah, Seth and I have, if you've been listening to the podcast, you know that Seth and I have been talking about this as much as we can in a reasonable fashion for chapters and chapters. We will continue to talk about it for chapters and chapters, but he didn't particularly want to be on this recording because it's an awkward topic and I have very strong opinions about it. So I got Gus from Wheel Takes to help me with this because him and I are good friends elsewhere on the interwebs and have talked about this a lot and have shared opinions about how this chapter should be interpreted. So
yeah, well, there's a lot to talk about. It's a
non-hostile takeover.
I'm glad to be here. I'm grateful for the invitation. I've been looking forward to talking about it because I think, it's a chapter that generates a lot of back and forth, but I also think that there's a lot of really, really interesting and good writing in the chapter. And I'm excited to dig into that and interrogate it, I think, is the right term.
As a general content warning, in case you forgot, this is a chapter about sexual assault. We will be talking about it in ridiculous depth and all kinds of angles and interpretations of that. If you have a problem with us considering Tylin to be a rapist, this is your cue to skedaddle. Because we're not debating that. So if that's going to give you high blood pressure, then please just skip to the next episode. Also, if the topic in general is upsetting, it's okay. You can leave because we're going to go there. And yeah, Gus, we should probably you've been on the podcast once.
I have, and it was very fun. I was here when we talked about, it was oh my God, which chapter was it? I remember it was really good. It was almost a standalone chapter. Jacob Carradine.
Oh, yeah.
Before he gets dunked into barrels. Has that happened yet? I forget when things happen.
That hasn't happened yet. But yeah, that was the one where he sees Matt and his brain explodes with stuff that goes back to book 2.
That's the one. And we got really into the weeds about whether or not Ishii did some kind of like backtracing weave on his brain that connected him to where Matt was at any given time. It was really, really quite fun.
Yeah, that was really fun. And that was partially to introduce your voice and content to the audience. But why don't you remind us about the podcast that you do when you're not showing up here?
Absolutely. Yes. So the podcast I do is called Wheel Takes. And this is a podcast that I was actually inspired in no small part by WoD Spoilers back in the day to create. Because I came on here and I listened to you guys talk and I said, gosh, would it be cool if there were a podcast where it were a first-time reader and a full spoiler reader, not knowing that there are several of those. So I think we're like the 5th first-time reader, full reader podcast to come out there. It's myself and my fiancé. As you can guess from my being here, I'm the one who's read all the books. and she has not. And we're in the middle of book 5 right now, and we're plugging on through it.
Yeah, it's really fun. I'm a big fan of Wheel Takes. Wish we could have Allie for this, but you guys have to read faster before that can happen.
Yeah, we got a couple books left.
You guys are making good time.
I guess so. I think we're going to slow down for a while, but Catherine found this podcast because of Wheel Takes. The circle is now complete. Yeah, we're going to do actually New Spring next, too, because of the show. And we want to make sure that we cover everything that might be in the show because, casting announcements and all that. Yeah. It'll be a while before we get to the fun of Book 6 and all of Book 7, which should be quite fun. I'm really looking forward to it, honestly. I think there's a lot to dig into and a lot to talk about. And it'll be good. It'll be good discourse. I like discourse. That's why we're on Discord.
Yeah, I know, right? It's funny how much order from chaos Discord has brought to my life. I'm like, is this either the worst or best name for a platform ever? Yeah, I encourage everyone to go check out Wheel Takes if you want hilarious hot takes and first-time reader opinions and some really amazing predictions.
It's upsetting. Like, it's really upsetting.
Nobody
sometimes.
saw Tom and Moraine.
Oh, she did. She did on fucking page
Allie.
1. She came in immediately and said, like, well, they're
the
gonna
most
fuck.
Ridiculous. I don't. And she's also pegged Danelle as maybe being Masana.
Well, I think that was mostly a joke, but
she won't let it go.
No, she's committed to it. But again, it's because it's one of those things where Allie will latch on to stuff as a joke and never let it go. For instance, she heard the name Tuon once, and now she's absolutely certain that Tuon is the daughter of the Nine Moons and will marry Matt Cawthon because, well, it's the only young Shan-Chan woman we've heard of. It's like, stop doing that.
Yeah.
It's a credit to Robert Jordan's writing, really. We all talk about, I didn't notice all this foreshadowing. She did. It's there. We're not making it up.
It's amazing. So yeah, if you want to laugh really hard at incorrect and correct takes, highly recommend Wheel Takes. It's a really fun podcast. And whenever a new episode drops, it's like drop everything, listen to a new episode. And your guys' server is really fun. Yeah, there's a lot of podcasts out there that I want to support and just don't have the mental brain power to, but you guys managed to somehow hook me.
Well, thank you. That's a high compliment, and I'm very grateful to you for it.
Chapter 29, The Festival of Birds, with the Dragon's Fang as the chapter icon.
I just noticed that. Yeah, that seems well, they're all deliberate, right? I didn't notice that. It's usually dark friends, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Is
historically, it's evil people, or specifically dark friends.
There's the beggar attack.
Oh, of course.
So that must be it.
Yeah, because they all work for old Cully.
Right. Yeah, because that's the funny thing about this chapter is we're mostly making it about the Tylin Matt encounter, but it's actually less than half the pages of the chapter, and then there's a bunch of other stuff.
Well, and it happens the first 2 pages. I was rereading it today. I was like, oh yeah, I remember this chapter. A bunch of stuff happens, and then the climax is obviously the assault scene. And I read it, and I was like, oh fuck, okay, we're on page 2 of the chapter, and it's over. Oh, okay, let's handle the trauma now instead. That's more interesting. Let's watch Matt deal with this shit rather than watch him be uncomfortable leading up to it.
Yeah, definitely surprised me too when I was doing my notes. There's a bunch of other things to talk about. Okay. We'll see how that goes with the time, but that's fine. Darkfriend attack. Dun, dun, dun. You like reading the book.
I do like reading the book. I was hoping you would ask me if I would read some of the book. What do you want me to read?
Yes. Would you read us in? Because the ending is a female POV, so I thought I could read us out.
Chapter 29. The Festival of Birds. Waking to the dice, Matt considered going back to sleep until they went away, but at last he got up feeling grumpy, as if he did not have more than enough on his plate already. He chased Niram away and dressed himself, eating the last of the bread and cheese from the night before while he did, then went to check on Ulver. The boy flashed between bursts of yanking on his clothes in a hurry to be out, and stopping entirely with boot or shirt in hand to spout dozens of questions that Matt answered with half a mind. No, they would not go racing today, and never mind the rich races at the Circuit of Heaven north of the city. Maybe they could go see the menagerie. Yes, Matt would buy him a feathered mask for the festival, if he ever got dressed. That sent him into a flurry. What really occupied Matt's thoughts were those bloody dice. Why had they started up again? He still did not know why they had before. When Oliver was finally clothed, he followed Matt into the sitting room, bubbling with half-heard questions, and bumped him from behind when he stopped dead. Tylin replaced the book Oliver had been reading the night before on the table. Majesty! Matt's eyes darted to the door he had locked last night, now standing wide open. What a surprise!
And cue super, super awkward interaction.
Oh my god, it's so painful. I'm only on my second read, so I know in the grand scheme of things I'm a baby.
Little baby.
Which is funny, because you'd think that having read 14 plus books would make you not a baby, but here we go. When I read this the first time, I remember coming through to this point, leading up to everything, I was just like, oh, it's weird, it's uncomfortable, I don't like it very much. And then I got here, and I had to put the book down for like a few hours. Because I certainly, I was young, I didn't see this coming at all, you know? I just assumed, like, how will our heroes get out of this one? Oh, they don't. I went to Reddit, and I was like, did this happen? Am I reading this correctly? And they were like, yep, we know. Welcome to the discourse. We've been here for a while.
Yeah, because you read these fairly recently, your first time through.
In the grand scheme of things, yeah. I mean, compared to folks who I didn't read them coming. I started after A Memory of Light, or right after A Memory of Light came out.
Okay.
And I read the first 5.5, and then I stopped. I got bored in the middle of book 6 somehow. I don't know how you get bored in the middle of book 6, but I got bored in the middle of book 6 and picked them back up again in 2017 and jumped straight ahead to 6 and then 7. So yeah, it was, 4 years ago that is, when I got here?
Yeah, I don't remember how I first felt when I read this, because that would have been in let's see, the first one I had to wait on was Knife of Dreams. So I would have gotten through book 7 in my first year, which is when I was in 7th grade. Is when I got introduced to these. So it was either 7th or 8th grade when I read this book the first time. And I think I just thought it was funny because I was like, hey, role reversal. That's cool. I like flipping tropes on their heads. Like, I'm a little uncomfortable, but I've read a lot of assault scenes of people that look like me at this point in fantasy. So
never seen this one before.
It was just kind of like, oh, hey, one of our heroes can be victimized the same way heroines can be victimized. So that's...
Look at that.
Fun.
Quote, unquote,
big air quotes.
Big air quotes. Yeah, I
definitely didn't see it as like a problem, I think, because it was just like the threat of sexual violence is really normal in the heroes that I'm reading about, because I was reading a bunch of books with women as characters, as the main protagonists.
Yeah, so it was a given in that case, as opposed to being out of left field, I guess.
Right. Yeah. Like, I'm used to my protagonist having to deal with these threats, even if they don't get followed through with.
Yeah. And I think that if I had read it when I was younger, as there's in chat, they're saying the knife would have thrown me off a lot. But up to that point, I think, and again, I was reading it the first time, up to this point, and I was like, it's kind of funny up to this point. And then I was in my mid-20s, and I was like, I've learned some things since I was 15, and I think that this is not a good thing that's happening right now. Let's engage with that.
It definitely didn't make me uncomfortable and, like, interrogate what was going on until several reads through. Like, the first time I was just like, oh, funny way to play that scene, whatever, moving on. Like, I didn't actually, like, dig into, like, what that meant.
I nearly quit the books. I considered, because I have a policy where if you handle either, like, brutal murder or sexual assault or, like, anything else flippantly without handling the gravity, I seriously consider whether I want to continue reading the book. And the fact that I did finish reading these books tells you that I think that ultimately he handled this with the appropriate gravity. And now looking back on it, and as you guys have talked about with book 7, I think that really there's an enormous amount of depth and thought to this scene that is not immediately apparent, I guess, on a first read. But the first time I read through it, I was like, is this just thrown in for kicks and laughs? Because I don't think that's very responsible.
Mm-hmm. It's funny because, like, when I came across the discourse around this, it made me want to quit the books. But at that point, I was like 8 rereads in.
Oh, you can't. Well,
so
at that point,
like,
yeah.
At that point, I've already had the tattoo half designed. I mean, it was like, I'm into it now. But yeah, I didn't engage with the fandom at all when I was reading them. Like, I never engaged with the fandom until I found Watt spoilers. So I came to the discourse fairly late. I guess probably closer to my 18th read than my 8th read, but whatever. It's all a wheel.
Well, I came to it much later than you did, so.
So, yeah, there's this whole thing with Oliver, where Matt's trying to use Oliver as a shield, which is, shows a bit of the depth of his desperation that he's using a child.
Yeah.
As a shield.
Mean, he's in a society where people stab and people knife and people fight, and he's got effectively innocence as his shield.
Mm-hmm. And he's like trying to protect Oliver from like all like these more adult things, and then at the same time he's
using Oliver to protect him from these adult things. Kind of. He's an interesting stepdad, Matt. I know there's plenty of discourse on Matt's parenting skills. And Oliver, of course, no goddamn idea what's going on. He just sees a woman in a low-cut shirt and he's like, I'm going, I'm out. That's perfect. That's all I've ever wanted.
Right, yeah, he just wants, like, the cool mask and to go see some fun stuff. And, like, yeah, he likes pretty women, but, like, he doesn't know what that really means.
No, he's 10, right? He's 10 years old.
Yeah, he's super innocent about what pretty women, like, lead to. Probably will not stay that way for very long, but...
He just enjoys pretty women. No, he's still prepubescent. He's on the cusp of all that.
Yeah, for sure.
Tylin certainly knows exactly why Oliver's there. And certainly knows exactly how to get him out of the room.
Right, and she uses Roselle, who she's probably used in this way before, to distract. I assume that Roselle is fairly practiced at being like, yes, I will distract whoever, because I have the biggest bosoms in the entire palace staff.
It's her special skill. It's one of many, I'm sure. Distraction.
Mm-hmm. And she ends up deciding to marry a Shan-Chan.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, she decides that she likes some Shan-Chan captain's singing and prospects and insists on marrying him fairly quickly. I recall that that's the whole, like, she was not even waiting for the usual courtship period.
Oh, that part, of course. I remember that.
Yeah, that's Roselle.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it's in, like, 2 books, but yeah, she has some agency.
A lot of 7, 8, 9, and 10 blend together for me. And a lot of these characters, they come back and I go, oh, of course, this happened. And Roselle is one. Roselle, and then at the end when we get into with the kin, I was like, oh, wait, what? And I had to look him up and go, oh, right, that plot. That whole plot. Yeah. That's important. That happens a lot.
Ooh, this comment in chat. The whole situation reminds me of the Harvey Weinstein case. Everyone knew what was happening and either helped or let it happen.
Yeah.
Accurate. Very accurate, Catherine.
It's very similar. I think it's the difference that I feel is that very little in the books is there an indication from a point of view character that this is wrong, right? And that's where I think we get into the genius of Robert Jordan's writing, is he leaves it up to the reader to understand that it's wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, that's that Reddit thread.
Yeah. Which we're probably going to reference a couple of times. That was very well done.
Yeah, and I will have that Reddit thread in the show notes for anyone who wants to read it. But there's this amazing thread where it talks about how Robert Jordan really doesn't tell you how to feel. He just gives you the situation. And as we've talked about on this podcast and other places many times, like, his point of view writing is amazing. Mm-hmm. You know, he makes you feel upset when the character is upset and confused when the character is confused. And, like, he also doesn't moralize very much. He generally lets you draw your own conclusions. And this chapter can either be seen as very lazy writing, or it can be seen as incredibly brilliant writing. And probably the truth lies somewhere in between. I think maybe RJ did a better job than he intended.
I think he tapped into a vein he didn't realize was there. Is kind of the way I look at it. Is because we've said on our podcast, Robert Jordan gets trauma. You know, he understands trauma. He understands some traumas better than other traumas. But this is a case where I think the way he writes, and I'm getting ahead of myself, so forgive me for that. But I think the way he writes Matt's response to this traumatic event is what made me go, oh no, this is deftly done. This is well handled. Mm-hmm. Because unlike some other cases in the books where stuff happens to people and then they just go like, well, that's over. Now I'm going to go back to whatever I was doing. This sticks with him for a really long time in some way or another. Not least of all because he has to remain in this situation. He has to live in this situation for a long time. And because he's Matt, and because he's never going to admit that he's not perfectly fine at all times, he has to figure out how to justify that to himself and how to live with himself. And he's very inconsistent for a while. This chapter, currently reading a lot of book 5 Matt chapters where there's a very consistent tone. The tone in this chapter, it just vacillates around a lot more. And he doesn't really feel like himself for the second half of it.
Which makes sense.
Which makes perfect sense, yeah, because he's been through some shit.
Yeah. And yet at the same time, we know that when Robert Jordan wrote the scene, and when he was asked about it, he did write it for laughs. He wrote it to be educational laughs.
Yeah, he called it a humorous role reversal, right? Yeah.
But sometimes I think we're able to find more in it than he necessarily put there, which goes back to one of my favorite, loving rants about the series, is that he wrote such a complete world that I can prove him wrong about his own ideas. Like, he did such a good job that, like, we can exceed what he meant for us to get from it, which is just amazing.
Well, it's honest psychology, right? He writes a very honest thing that is happening, and we can view the responses and psychology of it from the lens of the character. We don't have to view it through the lens of the author. Or we can incorporate the lens of the author, but, we can read the character. Right.
Yeah. Sometimes the author's just wrong. His work is correct, but he is wrong.
There's a story about the playwright Harold Pinter, who is he's a writer and he's also an actor, and he's best known for his pauses. He writes enormous amounts of pauses into things. And he was in a production of one of his plays that was being directed by, I forget who, but it was a famous British director, and he kept fighting with the director. He said, no. You're telling me to put air into this line. Take my time with this line. I have to say it straight out. I have to rush through it because that's how it's written. And the director said, no, it's not. You have to put a pause here. And he said, well, I think I would know. I wrote it. And the director pulled the script out and he holds it up to Pinter. And in the middle of the line, it just says pause. And Pinter goes, well, like I said, the playwright knows what's right. And I think he then ended up rushing through the line anyway.
Oh, that's funny. Tylin is like, you're lucky I'm not jealous, which is just like...
bit much.
Okay. There's a lot of incorrect assumptions you are making there. Mm-hmm. But yeah, she's like, I unlocked the door and now I have the key. Da, 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 da.
And I'm not giving him back. I control everything.
Yeah, I'm going to literally lock you in this room. It's fine. And she puts the keys behind her belt where he could potentially grab them or not. And it's the way she locks the door and says, now, Lampkin.
Yeah.
And smiles is like, oh, so creepy.
Well, what's the quintessential literary prey?
Yeah.
It's a lamb, right?
Yeah.
That's always the thing that must either be protected or is destroyed. It's always a lamb. She's calling him a little lamb. She's diminutized the very concept of him being prey. And in her mind, I'm sure it's playful, fun, good, everyone enjoys this, but that's not the culture Matt lives in. That's not the culture he was brought up in.
No, he was brought up around shepherds, for fuck's sake. I mean...
You actively protect the damn sheep. It's very different.
And just the whole, locking the door and then smiling is just, a classic move of, creepiness.
Absolutely.
The iron lock click is just, it's up there with a shotgun getting cocked for bad things are about to happen. This is your audio cue that this is not a good situation.
Yep.
And yeah, then Matt thinks this is all too much. She's hounding me, trying to starve me, and now I don't even know. She's locking us in he did not even know what. Like you said, he's starting to get more inconsistent. This is one of the most unsettled moments we ever see with Matt, where he's really skittering around from one view to another. And she wasn't able to truly starve him because it's a city full of food carts and he has money. But her intent has been to starve him, and he's piling that on to reasons of what is happening?
She's definitely taken control over every possible facet of his life that she can. Yeah, that's her character. She's a queen, and more than that, she is somebody who likes being in charge in all ways, whether you like it or not, which is not great. Not great as a trait.
And she's got the entire palace staff working for this also.
Yeah.
Right? She's got the kitchens working for this purpose, and they all know what her game is, and they're like, it's funny.
And they're all in on it. Yeah. Nobody, well, it's just the thing. It's what I'm saying is it's not Matt's culture, but it's their culture. In their culture, they're like, yeah, this is what you do. This is what you do. This is what's fun. This is how you do it. It's not how you do it. It shouldn't be how you do it.
I guess they all think he's playing hard to get because that makes the game more spicy.
I guess they should ask. You know, it's very easy. I mean, I know they don't care. I know that she wouldn't care. She clearly doesn't give a shit what he thinks or how he feels based on the rest of or she thinks she knows better how he feels, which you can't really ever know better than how another person feels about something.
It's very in the culture, though.
It
be
is.
Like,
it
this is normal, and playing hard to get is just one of the many moves people might make. So I guess if you assume that there's literally no female assault in their entire culture, then it might make sense that none of the women are like seeing what's really going on here. But living in this world, I have a hard time imagining that there's no like junior maids being like, hey dude, here's a bread roll, you know? Like,
agreed. Absolutely. No. I agree. It's I think it probably reflects as much as anything on her power and control. Because if you go against Tylin in this instance, you probably would be, at the very least, kicked out of the palace. At the very worst,
probably minus a hand.
Yeah. I mean, it's a culture that does not mind a little violence and a little bit of blade play. So
yeah,
to take that risk to protect another person, who do you know? You don't know them. I'm trying to say that I think the reason why there's not in-world sympathy to Matt is both because, one, most of the culture, as we said, thinks that it's okay, and those who don't, they're not gonna stick their heads up.
That's true. I mean, this is the queen. Like, this is the most powerful person in the land. Like, why would you even question her, much less act on those questions?
And it's interesting because we see Matt tries to actually get out of this situation. He grabs at the keys, and her demeanor turns. Right? It's I've heard a lot of, mostly women, but I've heard a lot of people talk about seeing something change in someone before something bad happens to you from them. And it's like a moment where everything's fine, then something changes in their eyes, and you're like, I have to get the fuck out of here right now. And here, you know, she starts, what is it? Remove your hand, she said coldly. She was not smiling now.
And it's because he's grabbing at her to get at the keys. And it's like,
he's trying to take a measure of control.
Yeah, and it's all of a sudden she's gaslighting him into being like, you're assaulting me. And it's like, excuse me. You don't get to defend yourself from someone who's defending themselves from you.
Yeah, that's not how that works.
Not in the slightest, but that's the situation she then makes it into.
Well, she's a very good manipulator.
I mean, you could make the argument that she still thinks this is part of the game, but like...
I don't think at this point. I think at this point when...
She's got to know that he's not into this. She has to.
Yeah, it's things change. And that's the moment where I, as a reader, was like, what the heck is happening? What's going to happen? Am I misunderstanding this? And then I went, no, I'm not.
So yeah, he reaches for the keys, and then she puts a knife right under his throat, so that way, like, the flexing of her wrist would be enough to, like, cut his jugular. So there's no room for error for him at this point, and he's, like, rapid fire calculating, like, are my hands fast enough to get the knife away? Like, am I about to die? Like, what's happening? And he was asking her, like, what's she gonna do? And his voice is getting all squeaky, and he even uses her name, which is, like, a big no-no in this culture. He's not in a panic. Okay, he's in a bit of a panic. Like, Matt doesn't panic.
No. Matt, the chapter we just read in book 5, it's before the battle in Kyrian, and he thinks to himself, this sucks. I would much rather be in a situation where I'm suddenly in peril. Those are great. I like it when, like, oh shit, it's a Mirdrawl. Better defend myself. It'll be over quick, and I know what I'm doing. This is a situation where he has had no chance to defend himself. Suddenly there's a knife that could kill him in a moment. And he has no choice at all. He has absolutely zero power in the situation.
Yeah.
Right?
And Tylin's like, oh, you want to play rough? And it's like, no, I would like to not play the game.
I would like to leave.
And she's like, that's not an option.
It's interesting because I think it almost, this in my mind echoes a question. I'm sorry I'm bouncing around in the books. I just think there's a lot of moments in the books that you can look at as comparative or relevant, I guess. And when else have we seen a knife or a blade to a throat in a situation that is sex-related in some way?
Never.
Maiden's Kiss.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, right?
Right.
And that it leads me back to a question, a debate that we've had on our podcast pretty extensively, which is Maiden's Kiss sexual assault? Now, Maiden's Kiss is different because it ends much, much sooner. And if you are an Aiel, it is abundantly clear that you are never in any serious danger, to my understanding of the game.
Right, right.
In this case, it certainly seems as though this could end with Matt's death. She's a queen. She could cover it up very easily. And it does not end quickly.
Yeah. I don't think she was planning on killing him.
I don't think she was planning on it, but she was certainly legitimately threatening him with it.
Yeah, for sure.
Whereas Maiden's Kiss, it's like you might get nicked a little bit. They might poke you a little bit, but you get so much
Kiss
toe.
would never end in death.
No, you get so much toe from killing an unarmed person that it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I remember that debate about is it assault, and I think one of the discussions I was in about that was like, well, with a wetlander, kind of sexual assault.
Yeah,
with an
the wetlander
Aiel,
doesn't know.
pretty much not. An Aiel's going to be able to like navigate that more straightforwardly, but a wetlander, that's whoa.
Very different situation.
Because again, a wetlander doesn't know if they're going to get killed or not because they don't understand Jiato.
Well, and a wetlander, with their limited understanding of Aiel, probably assume the moment they see an Aiel, they're going to be killed.
Right. Yeah. Cultural misunderstanding. Seriously.
But again, different situation. This is this could certainly end in at least bodily harm, and ends, I think, in much worse.
I do not think she's above stabbing. She would definitely draw blood.
Oh yeah. Most certainly.
Yeah. So she backs him into the room and backs him up against the bedpost, and he puts it together that she is in fact going to assault him at the point of a knife and is like, this is not possible. This is not happening to me. He's blushing, so clearly he's just embarrassed. No, he's not just embarrassed. He's fucking terrified. And saying, you can't do this to me, and his voice is shrill, and she's like, watch and learn. This is so hot. I'm going to titillate readers for the next several decades. And then we get a cut to black that isn't a cut to black, which is fortunate.
Yeah.
If RJ was bad at writing sex scenes, I really don't want to write his unwilling sex scenes.
Thank you. I would not enjoy that. Not that I would enjoy it otherwise, but that would not be cheating. Would have skipped that paragraph, I think.
Yeah.
I've read George Martin. I don't need to read those again.
Oh, God. Yeah, no, that's probably the number one reason why I did not like Game of Thrones, the books. Song of Ice and Fire. I was reading them and I'm just like, I'm not into this. I'm not into this at all.
And then I had my parents read them, which was a weird decision that I made, but there you go.
Wow.
I forgot about the sex parts, I guess.
Is it like when people recommend to their parents to watch Bridgerton?
Yeah, Allie told my parents, oh, Bridgerton's great, you should watch Bridgerton. And we hadn't finished it yet. And they called her. And we're like, how are you good? Are you okay? She's like, yeah, why do you ask? They said, did you watch episode 5? She went, no, we're on episode 4. And they went, okay, well, you guys have fun.
I got through, I think, the first episode of Bridgerton before I was like, this is just Downton Abbey with really bad commentary on race relations. So
I didn't finish it. I don't know. I would need to finish it to have a more thorough thought. But apparently the books are fun. So
yeah, Downton Abbey, I have room for one of those stories in my head, and Downton Abbey took that slot. So I do like the costumes, but whatever.
That's good. The costumes are beautiful.
I'm a period piece person. I'm like, oh, satin, it's fine.
I'm very excited for the costumes in the show.
Oh my god, yes.
No comment on, I think it was Moiraine's riding jacket. I did not mind it. I'm excited to see it. I don't think it's a blazer. I'd be kind of surprised if it were. We'll see.
We will see.
If it's a blazer, more power to you, I guess.
As long as the costumes show at least half the thoughtfulness that RJ put into page count on clothing descriptions.
You'd need to spend 20 minutes per episode just zooming up and down sleeves to get that much detail.
Yes, quite. So yeah, a considerable time later, because apparently that took a while, he's cranky. I wonder why.
I can't imagine why.
She's humming happily as she puts her clothes back on, which is just like fucking predator. Successful hunt. I mean, she's happy. She's pleased with herself because she successfully took down a lampkin.
Yeah, she did it. She won.
She got the prize.
I think it's part of it. She won and etc. And apparently had fun.
Yeah, I mean, apparently Matt's a good lay, even when he's not into it. Apparently he got into it. I mean, she had a good time.
Well, the question, I'm not going to get into the weeds or speculate because we didn't read it because it's not there, but I have to imagine that a knife was involved for a lot of it.
Yeah.
So.
And danger does tend to heighten one's responses.
Yeah, one way or the other.
That's a biological fact. We should make it very clear that arousal is not the same thing as consent.
No.
But arousal of one sort can lead to arousal of another sort. That's just biology.
They're close in the brain.
Yeah. Something about life and death and neurons that fire together, wire together.
I think they're literally close in your brain. I think like the centers for anxiety and panic and the centers for like sexual arousal are physically close to one another in your brain. Again, I'm not saying that arousal equals consent or anything of that sort. Obviously it doesn't. This is not how that works. Consent is consent. But from a neurological perspective, and a neurologist can correct me on this because I don't know shit except what I read on the internet. Yeah, that's something I read on the internet.
Yeah, there's have you ever watched Versailles?
No.
Oh, well, I don't really like what they did with Louis XIV. I love the actor, but I hate his mustache and his characterization. But whatever. Louis XIV apparently had a brother who was a very open gay man and crossdresser and also led his armies. And there's a scene in it where he talks about having the most raging boner of his life while riding into battle. And like this very aggressive scene where he's like threatening his lover with like, do you have any idea what it's like? And it's just, I mean, I've read about this before, but that scene really like just artistically described like that connection of like when you think you're about to die, you can be quite aroused. And I guess this is why rape and pillage go together.
Yeah, bloodlust. It's literally bloodlust, right?
Right. Yeah, I have no doubt that Matt was activated in that way. But he never gave enthusiastic consent or any consent at all.
Yes. It also doesn't mean he enjoyed it.
Right. But yes, I would imagine that a knife was involved for a lot of that. And then Tylin's like, oh, it must be because you're Taviran that I had so much fun. It's like, maybe you're an abusive dom. Maybe that's actually what got
that would
you
make
off.
sense. Maybe you could channel this into something healthy, but I guess not. We're not going to do that today.
No, that's not how queens roll, apparently. And apparently she drove both of her daggers into the bedposts at some point.
Yeah.
Seems like.
Yeah.
So I guess the knives did get taken out of the equation eventually.
Eventually.
Yeah. And then Matt does the medieval version of a cigarette after. Gets his pipe going. That
is so... I don't mean to laugh, but the image is just so like, really, Robert? We're doing that? That's what we're going for today? Okay, fine.
Yeah, that part is truly funny. Just the like gold bowl and the gold tongs and the pipe and the silk sheets. It's just like, this image is so comical.
Yeah, the image itself, taken out of context, is very funny.
So then we get his whole outburst about this isn't natural. Like, I'm supposed to do the chasing, which...
I really, really like this part.
Okay.
I really like the writing here because it is Matt's vocabulary doing its damn best to express his feelings.
Mm-hmm.
The way I see it. It is Matt putting into words, I didn't want this to happen. I really didn't want this to happen, as best he can. That's how I read it anyway. Is that these are the words he has, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to be phrased in such a way as to diminutize the event and to make it a grumble.
Right, because he makes everything into a brushed off.
Yeah, because that's Matt.
That's who he is. Yeah, what he is meaning to say is like, this shouldn't have happened to me. How could this have happened to me? Why me?
And he's having outbursts, And then the part where I really clicked in and went, oh, I think Robert Jordan does know what he's doing, is when she leaves and he's on the verge of tears. Because I can't think of another time we've seen Matt cry.
Yeah. No.
I don't think we've ever seen Matt cry. And he's been through a lot. He was hanged. He has holes in his memory. All of this stuff.
Oh, he cried on the road with Rand.
On the road, which was
when he
the
gets
only,
blinded,
yeah.
and he's
Yes.
like, "You won't leave me, right?" And he cries into Rand's chest, and it's really sweet and sad.
Of course, how could I forget that? It's beautiful. The only other time where he's really at his lowest on the road with nothing.
Yeah, and that's with the dagger like beginning to eat at his brain, but not really deep in there yet. So it's more of an authentic Matt than the rest of that trip.
Yeah,
he's very distraught, and what always got me. Not always, but what's gotten me in my examination of this is when he doesn't want to walk around naked.
Oh my God, yeah. Oh, that's. I love that. I love that part because
and he's afraid that she's going to jump out of the closet.
Yeah,
at him.
She could be anywhere. He's yeah. It's so it's very subtle. But we look at the only other time he's been basically in a bed chamber with other people, which is when he's in the tower, and he's like, What? I'm wearing underwear. How are you? You're going to come in here. You're going to see what you're going to see. Completely different. Vulnerability.
Yeah, he's not much of a clothing purist. He's not super embarrassed by nudity. But in the aftermath of being assaulted, he needs a little protection, even when he's ostensibly alone. And that, to me, is just like, he feels really vulnerable.
It's a subtle... I didn't pick it up until this time reading through it, where I went, oh, that's like I need to have something around me right now. I need to be covered up right now. I need to get out of this situation. She might be in the closet.
Like, you saw her leave out the door.
You watched her leave. You intellectually know she's not there. But how you're not going to let yourself feel that?
Yeah, you're afraid on a level that's very irrational, which is compounded by the fact that you're in denial already. It's been a whole 10 minutes and you're already deep into denial.
Well, and you can't be rational at a time like this.
No.
I mean, you really can't. You're freshly traumatized. You can't engage with that. I had a deer jump through my windshield last year and nearly kill me. And it wasn't until like days later that I was like, oh my God, I could have died. Because for the first two or 3 days, I was just like, well, I'm probably going to have a response to this at some point because I understand a little bit about how trauma responses work. But right now, can I drive this car? No, there's a hole in the windshield and I have glass in my eyes. I should pull over. Should I pull over? I should pull over. I still can't drive on highways at night comfortably. Like, it still freaks me out. Anyway, sorry. Different thing, but I mean, all I'm trying to say is Matt's response to this makes sense to me in that he's thinking things that don't make perfect sense, but they make perfect sense to him.
No, for sure. I have, fortunately, very few experiences with trauma to relate it to. Yeah, the need to be covered up is like, I'm a person who has a, mild relationship with clothes. I'm like, clothes, whatever. I was raised by half nudist hippies, like, but there are some people you don't want to be naked around. It's just uncomfortable. And that's not random.
Well, and your assailant, you definitely don't want to be naked around.
That makes sense. So yeah, he gets some clothes and he chooses a plain coat. I'm thinking because he wants to not attract attention.
Yeah.
He wants to just be as low and to the ground as possible. And then hides his clothes that were shredded by Tylin.
Under the bed, right?
He's like, I can't have anyone see this. I can't have anyone know about this. I'm just going to hide it away. I mean, obviously it's going to get found. It's under the bed. You just think the maids don't clean under the bed.
That's the first place people hide things.
Right. Also where he hides Tylin when he leaves her to get killed later.
Yeah.
I mean, again, it makes sense, but...
Yeah, but it's still an interesting parallel. And she is also torn to ribbons.
Yeah. And again, referencing that really cool Reddit conversation, Tylin's death being karmatic justice for her behavior. There's some symbology there with
Absolutely.
Her behavior gets hidden under the bed, and then she also gets hidden under the bed.
It's English class stuff. It's deliberate, but I think it's interesting. It's a good parallel.
And yeah, one of Matt's other first thoughts here is I don't want anyone to know, which is very classic for, assault of any sort, but particularly sexual assault. The shame around other people knowing is massive, and particularly with male sexual assault in this culture.
Absolutely.
Even more than with women to some extent, because women, at least, it's normal for women to get assaulted. but not for
horribly,
men.
yeah.
I mean,
Horrifyingly.
normal, it happens, but the assumptions around why you would be disbelieved are very different depending on your gender.
Well, and I mean, Matt has similar. He says this isn't. It's embarrassing. I've been emasculated. I'm supposed to be the one who pursues women. And then he intersperses it repeatedly with, but I sure as hell wouldn't do it like that. I sure as shit wouldn't do it like that. In his head, going like, that's not how it works. In a lot of different ways. But again, that's the thing. Is I think that one of the things I like about this chapter is I think that Jordan does a really good job. Well, as someone who has just read a book and is just speaking from I'm just here to read a book and talk about the book. I think that it's a nuanced approach to a guy being sexually assaulted and then just not knowing how to go about it and not having any kind of support network to deal with it for a while, at least, until eventually Elaine is like, oh shit. But it takes a few chapters, and they're hard chapters for him. And then a building falls on him later and it gets worse. But
yeah, and he doesn't get that much support, really. Like,
he gets like one conversation of like, I'm sorry that happened, that shouldn't have happened.
Yeah. I mean, she's like, oh, we can talk to Tylin about it. And he's like, please don't. And then that's the end of the matter. And that's awkward. But yeah, so he goes to look for the key, and she's taken it away because she's taking away all of his agency. And he thinks, like, what am I going to do? I could move back to the inn, but, like, you know, the dice are telling me not to. And Tylin would probably bribe the people at the inn to drag me back here. Like, he feels extremely like he has no option, which I don't know if Mistress Anon would support that, but I don't know that she wouldn't either.
Well, I think he feels entirely alone because she's isolated him completely. I mean, I think he feels he has no option because she has curtained over any option he might have. She'd find him if he went to the inn, presumably. In his mind, she'd find him, right? In his mind...
He doesn't have any confidence that Mistress Anon would protect him. Because again, this is the queen.
It's the queen.
And Mistress Anon is very much Ebudari in terms of culture, even if she's not, you know, racially Ebudari. And then he's got this whole thing about, like, he wouldn't put it past Nynaeve and Elaine to claim he had broken his agreement and put an end to their promises. So he's put himself into a double bind there, which, again, without explaining to them the situation, they probably would claim he had broken his promises. And he doesn't want to explain to them what's going on.
No, he doesn't want to engage with it at all. It's I'm sure, deeply unpleasant to engage with. He spends most of the rest of the chapter trying not to think about it and trying not to talk about it.
He's trapped mostly by Tylin, but also in a bit of a cage of his own making, because he won't allow himself the few options, like going to his friends for help. He's like, nope, that's not happening. So, burn all women's is normally an attitude that I'm like, Matt, have a little nuance. But in this situation, I'm like, no, you're right, Matt, burn all women. We can save hashtag not all women for later.
And she gives him a present. She gives him a mask.
A coat, right? A mask, and money for a piercing.
For a piercing. So now she's saying, your body's mine now, I control it. You're going to do this with it because that's what I want you to do with it.
Also, it's literally going to be bodily harm.
Yeah.
Like,
it's a stabbing.
Yeah.
It's a stabbing.
I own you. You are a piglet. Now go get your ear tagged.
And if this were a consensual relationship, cool. You guys have fun with that. It's not, though. You know, I mean, there is such a thing as consensual, dom sub relationships. This ain't it. This ain't one.
Mm-hmm. It could have been.
It could have been.
Definitely could have been. Like, that ship has sailed, but it was in port for a while. She had the option to make this a very spicy dom sub relationship that could have been a huge awakening for Matt. But instead, it's just not.
It's just not.
Nope. She did not get a safe word first. And yeah, he nearly weeps again because, again, he gives women presents. He's the one that does the chasing. Like, I like how you're saying that, like, he's using the language he knows to express something that he does not know how to deal with. Because it's easy to be like, to just read him at surface value. But as a translation for more discomfort,
I think that it's safe to say that there are two characters who are always unreliable narrators, right? Matt and Nynaeve.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if we take Matt at face value here, he wouldn't be crying. Why would you cry over receiving a present instead of giving one? You would say, like, take the damn thing back, I don't want it.
Mm-hmm.
This is the language he has, and to me, if you distill down the words he thinks, I'm supposed to do the chasing, I'm supposed to do this, I'm supposed to do, they're all operative words, they're all verbs. He's saying I should have agency. I should have some level of control here. I have none.
Weeping from frustration, from humor, because the situation's weird, or because he feels trapped and doesn't know what to do with that trauma.
Consider the fact that the unlocked door is its own sentence. He looks at the door, that door is no longer locked, that door is no longer a barrier. There are no barriers anymore. What can I do? I can't do anything. As you say, part of it's a cage of his own making, because he doesn't see the options that are available to him, because he's understandably, I think, afraid of what they might entail. How the world might react, how his friends might react. He doesn't want to be outcast by the people that could provide him comfort. I get that.
Mm-hmm.
I just really love the way Robert Jordan writes Matt in these pages.
Yeah, I used to hate it. Honestly, I really didn't get it. But the more I interrogate this book and the more I interrogate this chapter, the more I'm like, damn, Jordan, you actually knew what you were doing, even if you didn't. Like, Matt is being very internally consistent by being so inconsistent.
Yeah.
Which is wildly skillful on RJ's part. I
mean, at the end of the day, the guy understands trauma like nothing else. And I think he approached this trauma in a very honest way. He doesn't always, but I think in this case he did.
Yeah, and I mean, Matt is an inconsistent narrator who's a jokester. Like, having it be confusing and easily amusing is not out of character with Matt.
No, that's a common. I mean, it's not rare to defuse your own tension and trauma with a joke.
Mm-hmm.
I have a friend whose mother passed away not long ago, and she has used a decent amount of humor to deal with that. It's a coping mechanism.
Yeah, for more than just those of us who are pranksters who will let badgers loose on the village green.
Yeah.
Like, even people who are less of pranksters than that will use humor.
Absolutely.
So, he takes the mask because he needs a mask. And she owes him for his clothes. And skedaddles on out of there and meets up with the rest of the group. And then we get into the whole rest of the chapter, which is the bulk of the pages of the chapter.
What are we,
an hour talking
in?
about that.
Well, there was a lot to talk about.
There was a lot to talk about. But yeah, the rest of the chapter is a little more normal. So yeah, he meets up with Nalesean and Birgitte and Beslan and co. And they're going to go out through the Festival of Birds, which is basically Mardi Gras. I think. I've never been.
It sure feels like it.
To Mardi Gras, but I've never heard anyone dispute the assertion that this is essentially Mardi Gras. So, and that's part of why I got the picture behind me that I do. And I love the whole interaction with Birgitte throughout this chapter.
Oh, it's great. I just love their relationship. I love their friendship so much.
Yeah.
Allie currently is saying, like, oh my god, imagine if Matt and Birgitte ever talked. Imagine if they ever met up. Wouldn't that be fun? Like, yes.
It sure would be. Yeah. Yeah, Birgitte is actually decked out in a sexy dress, like all the other ladies, and most of the men in the city. And he's confused because he thinks of her as not like the other girls. And it's like, what is she doing? Dressing like all the other girls. And she's like, sometimes it's fun to be looked at. Duh.
Also, she does this. I feel like she does this more often than Matt thinks. I mean,
oh yeah.
5, she sees Nynaeve's red dress in the circus and is like, me, give it, and then she just keeps pulling it down.
Yeah,
because she's like, I'm hot, I'm happy about it.
Yeah, this is a side of her that we have met as the audience, but Matt has not met this side of her yet, and it's a delight. And it's a fun part of Matt's evolution with thinking about women. All the things about Birgitte is like, no, not like the other girls, and is able to be a friend doesn't mean desexualized.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, a very, important lesson for all of us, that just because she can, shoot your eyes out and be made Marian doesn't mean she can't also, clean up real nice.
People are complicated.
What?
People have facets. And again, Robert Jordan writes people. By and large, he writes people that are not just archers or just soldiers, or in Birgitte's case, not just heroes. She's the hero. She also likes to go out and be like, I am super hot and people are looking at me and I don't care.
Or I do care, but I care in the way that's like fun.
Yeah, and I'm happy about it and I'm going to wave and walk away because I can.
She's like, even like, moving in front of Beslan, even though he's way too pretty for her. She's like, whatever, it's still fun to tease. Which is just like, I mean, I wish I had that kind of confidence.
Yeah, I get that.
Still definitely trying to like detangle the whole, like, if you flaunt yourself, you're asking for it. Like, I know intellectually that that's not true, but I'm still working on getting it out of my subconscious.
Yeah, it's a societal thing, right? It's difficult to deprogram a societal thing.
It's extremely difficult. We can all aspire to have a little bit of Birgitte's confidence in our lives, I think.
Yeah, we can celebrate that.
So yeah, they ask why Matt is late to their assigned meeting time. He tries to excuse himself, and then a bunch of feathered festooned fools come in with Beslan, because Beslan, of course, needs a coterie of fuckboys.
He's a prince. He's a fuckboy prince. You think the fuckboy prince isn't going to have a bunch of fuckboy friends?
Exactly, right? And none of them ever get names, so we know per RJ, like, that means they don't have backstories. Like, they're literally just lordlings all in a group.
They're fuckboy lordlings. To be fair, I feel like very few lordlings ever actually get backstories.
Yeah, there's like
a handful.
There's the Tylin and Kyrianen, a handful of them. Most of them end up in Shafail. But yeah, these guys never do. I think because they all kind of abandoned Beslan once the Shanshan show up, and Beslan's actually trying to like make a stand. I don't think any of them are helpful in that. So Beslan's really on his own. But yeah, Beslan insists on coming along on this trip, even though Nalesean and Matt have both done their best to discourage him, and it starts to become really awkward because he's like, I'm coming regardless. And they're like, you really don't want to? He's like, I literally told you unequivocally I want to.
Yeah, I'm going to party with you all the time. That's what I do now.
And then he's getting suspicious, but like, what are you trying to keep me off from? So they're like, fine, okay, fine, you can come. This is awkward as hell. And Matt's like, really doesn't, because he doesn't think Beslan knows about what his mother's doing, and it's all very awkward.
Pretty much any other culture in these books, Beslan would not know what his mother is doing.
No.
This is a culture that is very open about this stuff.
And I mean, like, I get Beslan's reasoning. Who cares? She's the queen, and she's widowed. She can do what the fuck she wants, but also the level of openness is a little bit, like, unusual in the Westlands.
Comparatively to the rest of this world. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, everyone knew that Morghese and Gareth Bryn were a thing, but, like...
They didn't talk about it. Or if they did, they didn't let her know they were talking about it.
Right, and also, like, he's close to her age. I mean, he's older than her. Like, she's not half her age.
In I think it's book 5, when we get the first Morghese chapter, where she's like, oh, I have been going through a lot lately. One of the things that really rattles her is that people know or are talking about her and Gabriel.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's that people are talking about it. No, Leni is like, yeah, we know that's happening. And she's like, you what? You what?
Right.
You shouldn't, you could suspect, you shouldn't know.
Yeah. Well, because she's, Elizabeth I and the Virgin Queen and all of that. I mean, obviously not a virgin because children, but Ebudar, there's a lot to recommend Ebudar. I'm not a big fan of puritanical cultures or ones that hold up that sort of like don't ask, don't tell nonsense. So I like that much about Ebudar, that they're very like, sex happens and it's fun, which is like, yes, these are facts. The whole like, hey, yeah, son, I'm gonna bang one of your friends. Isn't that neat? Is like oversharing much.
It's not a conversation I would want to have. I can say that much for sure.
Right. Yeah. Let's just say I know people in Portland, Oregon, that have very thin boundaries on what they think is appropriate conversation to have. And sometimes that is awkward. And no, I'm not talking about Seth. I know more people in Portland than that. It's not all of them. It's just, oversharing is a thing that can happen. Matt thinks that all the fuckboys wouldn't be coming along if not for Birgitte being hot and proud of it. And this line, I did not twist, I moved, with primness that's blatantly false. Just like, yes.
He would have laughed some other time.
Some other time, which again is like, he's not in a good place if he doesn't think that's funny, because that is objectively one of the funniest things ever.
That's extremely funny.
I did not twist. I moved.
I moved. He also keeps, and he keeps thinking of Brigitte's not wearing her proper clothes, and it's weird that she's this revealed. Which I get it. It's because Matt can't understand that human beings have more than one role in life. But I'm being, by the way, that's a joke. I'm being overcritical of Matt here. I love Matt, but yeah, it's something he's picking up on and he's paying attention to.
Yeah, he's in better and worse ways. He is learning that women are not one-dimensional creatures, because that's very much been his approach to women, is that they are a completely different species, totally unrelatable, and something that, I think is a flaw in a lot of Jordan's writing is that he has men and women being completely different. And Birgitte is one of the few characters that allows us to see that people are in fact complicated and contain multitudes. And it's...
Yeah, she bridges that quite well.
And that's really important for Matt in particular to learn. Like, well, all the Taviran boys, really, they all really need to learn that about women one way and another. And it takes strong women characters that are interestingly written to bring that through. But Birgitte might be my favorite of all of them.
She's probably like a top 5 character in the series for me. I just think she's fun.
Yeah.
I just think she's neat.
Yeah, exactly. I just think she's neat. And yeah, then we get the comment that he has never chased any woman who let him know that she did not want to be chased, meaning that he has done everything in his power to let Tylin know he does not want to be chased. Mm-hmm. She is officially exceeding anything he's ever done, even in a game of playing hard to get with a woman.
And it is a very deliberate thing that he pops out. He goes out of his way to think that.
Like, it's one thing to not be used to being pursued, but it's another thing to not having no mean no.
Yeah.
Right? Like, just being pursued is different, but...
That's a very different situation.
But not having no mean no is like, what?
Well, not being able to get out of that pursuit is frightening.
Yeah, and he would never do that, because he is many things, but he's not a rapist. He's problematic, almost definitely, and has made unwelcome advances, but has backed off when they was made clear they were unwelcome. So, best to not be a creep in the first place. But if you're going to be a creep, then at least take no for an answer.
Yeah, at least stop.
Yeah, and, he's a dashing rake. He's allowed to be a little problematic as a character archetype. That is a thing. Don't expect all of our characters to be perfect. That would make a very boring book.
Dull.
Yeah, so they go waltzing out into the street. Bunch of descriptions about feathers.
They just wander and look at people doing stuff.
Yeah.
Walking around, Allie and I like to talk about those chapters. This is a chapter where we walk around and we look at people and we talk about them. And then the chapter's over. That's this part of this chapter.
Mm-hmm. Big panning shot of Mardi Gras.
Looking at people.
Yeah, and people are mostly dressed in feathers. And apparently the festival normally takes place indoors, but because climate change, it's all outdoors.
Too hot for that shit.
Yeah. People are wandering around in, like, literally 3 feathers, which is, speaks to the general sanctity of physical safety in the city.
Yeah.
Women are walking around basically completely naked, and that's fine. It's like, okay, so assault is not a super common occurrence here. That's neat.
And everybody has knives.
Yeah, for sure. And there's the whole, like, if you're a woman stabbing a man is innocent until proven guilty and all of that. But still, it's the levels of freedom and liberation on that front are pretty neat.
Oh, certainly. Yeah. It's notable.
And they get squeezed aside by these floats that are going by. And we get to see Nalesean tossing coins to beggar children and Birgitte pressing each coin into every grubby hand like a gift, because Birgitte has a thing for kids.
And she's also Robin Hood.
And she's Robin Hood, so yeah. Just fun little characterizations, and I am just, like, clinging to every scrap of Nalesean we get, because he's gonna die soon.
I know.
It makes me sad.
That one caught me off guard.
Yeah.
That one made me sad.
It's one of the most brutal losses of a character in the whole series for me, and I am never going to get over it.
It also caught me off guard when I realized he had 2 E's in his name, because for several books I called him Nalesean, and then all of a sudden it was Nalesean.
Well, in fairness, it's a weird name.
It is not a name. You're right. It is just words and letters mushed together. But what else is new? It's a fantasy book.
Yeah.
I love the stratification and bureaucracy that underlies this. You know, it's very I forget the nation in Stormlight where everything has rules and you haven't. It doesn't matter. But
I've gotten about 10 chapters into Stormlight and lost interest.
Oh well, there's a whole nation that is just made up of bureaucracy and everything has rules and regulations and bylaws and blah 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 blah. And the idea that you have to be in a guild to be a beggar is reminiscent, or that is reminiscent of this, I should say.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like, no, but it makes sense. Like, you're gonna have social hierarchy, like have some order to it. I mean, that's what Shanshan brings. Is like, I mean, they insist on not having the poor. They insist on having chain gangs instead. But you know, the idea of like, if you have a guild, if you have order, people are organized, and there's a chain of command, and there's systems, and that's not a bad thing. I mean, certainly it makes more sense than just like the NIMBYism that plagues our society, where it's like, go be homeless somewhere else.
A term I did not know until recently, NIMBY.
Yeah. For anyone who's wondering, not in my backyard.
Standing for not in my backyard.
Yeah, NIMBY. And it applies to wind turbines, nuclear waste storage, and the homeless. Those are the 3 contexts I've really seen it in. You know, Portland has a huge problem with like, well, just clean up the homeless. Where are they gonna go? I don't care. Just not in my downtown. It's a gross problem. So Ebu Dar at least is like, go join the guild, and that will, you know, if you're gonna be homeless, you can be part of the guild.
That's fine. Just register, I guess.
National Registry of Beggars. But this is all the reason that we see beggars that don't have the little brass ring to mark them as members of the guild is because this is actually a bunch of Darkfriends who are about to attack Matt and co, because that's been happening repeatedly throughout this book, is kidnappings and assaults from random beggars. That's a theme.
They blend in.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense, right?
Oh,
If you needed to have... it makes sense.
And because we have old Cully in this city, who's apparently a pretty decently high-ranking Darkfriend.
How do you think they delineate ranking? Is it like whoever's done the worst shit?
I would assume so, yeah.
I guess.
It's like it's an evil dick measuring contest, I guess.
But
I mean,
I feel like by that metric, Jacob Carradine has done a lot worse shit than Millie Skane. Millie Skane's killed like 10 people, but Jacob Carradine has like infiltrated the White Cloaks and messed stuff up and down the coast.
I mean, maybe it's a matter of like what you've done like on command. Like, what, like, missions have you successfully carried out or something? Or, like, what orders have you succeeded in? Like, not just being evil, but, like, how many babies have you killed on command? I don't know. I'm sure there's a lot of, like, Darkfriend politics to it also. But, you know, we get so few POVs that, like...
We make do with what we got.
But Old Cully is pretty high up the ranking of Darkfriends that we ever, like, have our cast interact with. So that makes sense to me that they keep having like swarms of beggars who can come and do this, you know, do these assaults and do these attacks and attempts at kidnapping, because like one of the big Darkfriends is in the city and has presumably lots and lots of people he can call on. It's kind of like the Kin, but for Darkfriend beggars.
They wouldn't get along.
No.
Those two groups would not get along very well, I don't think.
No, methinks that the Kin are not generally approving of beggars at all.
No, probably not.
And yes, Delusions, we have referenced that Reddit thread a couple of times, and it will be in the show notes for the episode. I'm not on Reddit for the most part, but I definitely got into it several years ago for a while, and yeah, it was like, oh, each sub is its own animal.
I do love this beggar fight though.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that they are specific. Matt thinks that they're just ignoring Birgitte because they don't think she's a threat, and they're going for him because he's a threat. I think it's much more likely, of course, that they're specifically coming after him. But I appreciate that Birgitte immediately just starts wailing on people.
I love, too, that Matt doesn't worry about defending her, even though she's just in a dress and 6 feathers. He's like, oh, good, she's at my back. At least I don't have to worry about that part of me.
There's an enormous amount of respect between the two of them,
mm-hmm.
which is nice.
But yeah, it's a good little action scene. only one of the fuckboys gets even scratched. Otherwise, they just stab all of the Darkfriend beggars to death. And we get a mention of Old Cully, which is how we know that this is a plot rather than a coincidence. You know, there's other assaults and kidnappings where we're like, we assume that that's what's happening. This one, we actually get a direct comment that lets us know that's what's happening.
And I feel like the fight gets, what is it? The Fellowship of Alms jumps in almost immediately and is like, no, this isn't how we do things. You're breaking the bylaws.
Right. Which is why they have a guild, presumably, is because then they can
And
do
it works.
self-policing.
You know what? Forget what I said before about thinking it's funny. It works. It's a great idea. There should be guilds for everything.
Self-policing communities are generally really good at self-policing.
Mm-hmm.
When you have good motivation to keep things orderly, you don't need an external police force. Just motivate the community itself to take care of itself.
I just love they're like, you guys are non-union beggars. Get out of here. Scabs. Come on.
Yeah. Definitely. It's like, what are you posers? Get out of here.
Now I'm imagining a union of beggars going on strike. What service do they provide?
They pick up
I'm not
bottles
sure.
and cans and take them
There
to the
you go.
recycling center.
Philanthropy opportunities?
Yeah, you can use them to like watch your horse, you know?
Scab beggars. I'm just not over scab beggars. There's something there. There's a joke there. I'm not sure what it is.
Yeah.
Allie will make that joke in 3 years.
And yeah, apparently the guild is going to kill all these guys. Apparently they have a zero tolerance policy on assaulting the
shit.
gentry.
I forgot about that part.
Yeah.
Okay, well, oops. I guess they're dark friends.
And then Birgitte apparently has nowhere to hide a knife, and yet does, which just questions, costuming questions. I'm assuming she's got like discreet, like color matched sheaths just in the dress.
Maybe she's die-harding it.
Mm.
She's just got it like there's a little tape or a little sticky on her back.
Yeah. She's also got like the like thigh thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah, thigh holster?
Yeah. She's probably got like, 4 per leg. Because she's Birgitte.
It's like when Matt goes into Roydian and he just keeps putting
Yeah.
he just keeps putting weapons down and the maidens are like, what the fuck? Holy shit, this guy's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, Birgitte would keep going after Matt was done. That's how many knives she has. Oh yeah, and then here's Matt thinking if a beggar slit his throat, he wouldn't have to go back to the palace.
Yeah. You know what's a sign of a healthy relationship? Pondering whether death would be better than going back to it. That's not a sign of a healthy relationship.
Sure, it's hyperbole and sarcasm and unreliable narrator.
Absolutely.
Or it's he
I think
didn't
it's
like
also
that.
there's some truth there. I think that I'm not denying that Matt's hyperbolic, but I'm also he thinks the thought, whether he has it as a joke or not, he still thinks the thought.
Delusions of Grandal said, I really hope Birgitte has a thigh gap because the chafage of the thigh holsters would be uncomfortable. And I don't think she has a thigh gap. I think she's quite curvaceous. So I don't know how she's making the chafage work. But I'm sure she is because she's a hero. And surely heroes can manage little things like chafage.
You can live with it. Baby powder.
Right, yeah. Like there's just a cream for that. It's fine.
I went on a lot of hikes when I was younger. Baby powder. It works really well. That's too much information for the one day, and we can continue on. I forgot that a lot of people are going to listen to this.
Well, it's okay. Worse things have been said on this podcast. It's interesting comment about how you have to have coin to go near naked. Apparently, the higher up in the social order, the less the clothing. And as he goes to the place by the kins, like people are dressed more conservatively.
It's the opposite of the Shanshan, right? Because in the Shanshan, if you're wearing really revealing clothing, you're what's the
Dakoval.
I forgot the Dakoval,
Yeah.
or you're a Sojin dancer. There was something. I'm really bad with words, so forgive me for bumbling the words.
Yeah, no, Sojin is the hereditary servants, but yeah,
That's it. Okay.
There's also the Shay
dancer.
Shay
That's
dancer.
probably it.
Yeah, I think there's also one that Birgitte says that's like what you're saying, that's one of
Yeah.
the different ages.
That's it, because I'm in that part on book.
Yeah.
Shay dancer. Thank you. Yeah.
But I mean, specifically with that's like because servants are supposed to be pretty. It's not like a social class thing. It's like you're an object, so I will look at you sort of thing.
That's true. But I feel like there are Shanshan nobility who react to overly revealing clothing as being like, what am I, a servant?
Yeah.
So I think you're right, but I do think there's an element in there that wearing more revealing stuff is like a sign that you're there to be observed and viewed as an object rather than as agency, as opposed to here where it's like, well, I can do whatever the hell I want, so here's cleavage.
Right, yeah, like when when Egyanan is like horrified that Bael Domon saw her in her nightie.
Yeah, and she's wearing a colonial era, 14 layers thick padded nightgown.
Yeah, like more clothing than I wear most days. Like,
I appreciate this comment in chat that says, I feel like money insulates you from bad behavior in the real world as well. I think that's very, very apropos.
It's very true. I mean, yeah. Money solves everything except what it doesn't, but like we'll ignore that. Look at like high fashion. Not the weird stuff, but just like general like red carpet high fashion. Like there's not a lot going on there sometimes, but it's fine because they're celebrities and they have lots of money.
It's interesting because I feel like I actually I've done some reading on the whole concept of those red carpet shows because I've never seen anyone wear anything from a red carpet show in the real world. And apparently the idea behind those shows is not buy this and wear it, but this is kind of the distillation of style, and this is what we're going for. Now let's design practical clothes based around this premise. Which makes me a lot more sympathetic when it's like a garbage bag. A very expensive, very well-made garbage bag. I'm not saying it's not, but I do look at it and go, well, that would take an hour and a half to put on.
So I finished The Crown and then went on a Princess Diana jag because, as one does.
Yeah, because of course, why would you not? Yeah.
And I've never really been on a Princess Diana jag before because her death was when I was still a little kid. Like, but there was, I think it was Diana in Her Own Words, that documentary. And there's some footage of an event that they went to, and like her dress is so low. It's a strapless black dress, and it's like, I swear, barely covering her nipples. Like, it is so insanely low. And I'm like, this is the Princess of Wales. And she's virtually wearing a skirt that is just up high enough to hang on her nipples. No disrespect, but it just, like, blew my mind that anyone would wear a dress that looks that ready to fall off, much less the Princess of Wales going to a formal event. And I'm wondering, like, how much that relates here. Like, you're wealthy enough, you can do what you want. But, like, if you were, like, a normal person wearing it, you would be just, like...
It'd be trashy.
Yeah. There would be a lot of very unflattering comments hurled your way about sex work. So even in Abu Dar, apparently that dynamic comes through. It's a very, like, sexually liberated and enlightened city, but classy if you're rich, trashy if you're poor still came through. That was a tangent.
Well, I mean, it's clothing in a Robert Jordan book is never going to be that off the mark.
Fair.
I'm sorry. I mean, it's
He's approving
it's
right
every
now.
Yeah. Again, George Martin food, Robert Jordan architecture and clothing.
But yeah, they get to the rows of the Elbar where they've been spying on the Kin's house, and the Kin's house is locked up tight and dark, and nobody's having a good time there because the Kin are prudes.
Yeah, I was gonna say, they don't seem like they'd be the type to do anything fun.
No, they're like more the tower than the tower. Like the tower, at least, like occasionally some of the Aes Sedai cut loose, but the Kin are just holding the tower up on a pedestal, so they never cut loose.
They have to live up to that.
Yeah.
Oh, you have exceeded that.
Oh, so much. They've missed the point and exceeded it.
There is something to be said for carrying about an air of superiority with no actual grounding behind it for, I don't know, how many hundreds, thousands of years that the White Tower has done that? That now every single other organization is like, well, they're the shit, obviously.
Right.
And then they meet them and they go, wait a minute, you're not the shit. You're shit.
Yeah, right? You're not the shit. You're just regular shit.
Have we gotten to the point yet? No, we haven't. We must not have. Where Nynaeve tells the Kin stop kowtowing or stop bowing down to Aes Sedai, and then they start bossing her around, and she goes, "No, not like that."
We're not there quite yet, but it's coming soon, and I can't wait for it because it's adorable. Oh, Seth just joined us. Hello. Oh, you're still at work, but yeah, hi. We are at the Rose of the Elbar, talking about clothes.
I've been known to wear a cloak.
I too have put on clothing occasionally.
I'm seeing now the third time in this book where we've had note brought to Matt being Taviran. Because first it's all the stuff with Tylin where she's like, well, it's because you're Taviran. And then it's all this stuff with the beggars where he's like, of course you got attacked. It's Taviran. And then we continue talking about being Taviran later.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of adds to his perceived value, it seems, in a way that it hasn't before elsewhere.
He gets pursued for being Taviran before. I mean, Melindra being a great example.
That's true, but I mean, she had nefarious motives, otherly nefarious motives there.
And his proximity to Rand was as much what was going on there as being Taviran. But yeah, it's the most interesting thing about Matt is he's Taviran, and he's like, also, I have skills, but sure, care about my Taviranness.
I'm a person, and my name is Anakin. Come on.
So yeah, we're really driving that home. Like everything that's happening to him is because Taviran. That's what's happening.
Speaking of a pedestal.
Yeah, seriously. Being Taviran would suck, honestly.
That'd be terrible. I mean, for one thing, you have no choice. You have no free will. Not really.
No.
Until it's done with you. Zooming out, it's one of my favorite things about the series is how you think like, oh my god, you're Taviran, you can do anything. And it's like, no, you can do exactly what you're supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. And then you're done. And then you can do what you want to do.
Yeah, I love it as a way to make plot armor not weird. It's nice to be like, no, plot armor is just part of the magic system. It's like,
yeah, it's just real.
It's neat. I like that. It's a way to get into a different space, but it would suck to have that actually apply to you.
It would be a bummer. And then all of his friends leaves. The fuckboy princelings are all just like,
the fuckboys leave.
She's not flirting back, and we are gonna go to get drunk. Goodbye.
Which is, I mean, it's fair. Like, Birgitte's like, oh no, you can look, but you cannot touch. Don't even bother hoping for to touch.
Don't even think about it.
And they're like, we're fuckboys. We that's not fun. They go off to be fuckboys. But Beslan stays because he's intrigued by Matt and Taviran, and I think Beslan just wants to be around Taviran. I don't think Taviran's acting on him at all.
Oh no, yeah. I don't think Beslan brings, as interesting as he is as a character, I don't think he brings anything to the table in the cosmic scheme of things. I think he just likes seeing what happens.
His relationship with Tuon later is
I'm sorry, I mean at this point.
But yeah, that's when he's just establishing himself as a character to remember when he comes up in 4 books.
Yeah.
It's like, this is when you're going to want to remember, because he won't leave Matt alone.
You say his name more than a few times. Actually, it's a Robert Jordan book. We've said 1,000 names more than a few times. But I mean, I feel like the main reason he wants to stick around is so he can have what he thinks is a heart-to-heart with Matt, because he jumps right into that.
Yeah, first he points out that he knows who Birgitte is, which is just sort of primes the ground to surprise Matt, I guess.
Let's get him off balance first. I don't think he's trying to surprise Matt, though. I mean, it seems like...
Yeah, no.
It seems like he really thinks like, oh, you know, Matt obviously knows that I know we're going to go party now. And it's going to be great because, again, Beslan has no concept of the situation. Probably because he's getting all of his information from his mother.
And again, the culture says that this is
and
normal.
The culture,
so
yeah, and the culture says that women pursue men and men like it and want it.
Yeah, I think I don't even know if he wants to have a heart-to-heart so much as he's just like, I want to see what happens if I hang out around you, and I feel like making small talk. So I think it's cool that my mom decided to bang you. And Matt's like, excuse me while I choke to death on tea.
I should clarify what I mean by a heart-to-heart. By a heart-to-heart, I mean like, and this is going to be a weird metaphor, but it's like the conversation you have with your significant other's parent the first time you're alone with them, where they're not really sure if you're super comfortable being alone with them, and you're not really sure if they're super comfortable being alone with them. So I feel like what he's trying to do there is be like, hey, I'm happy for you, buddy.
Yeah.
Which, of course, is the last fucking thing Matt wants to hear.
Right. But it makes sense from Beslan's point of view to be like, don't be awkward. Like, we're not awkward. Yeah. It's cool.
This is good, man. I think this is a good thing. And Matt is very much of not that mind.
Right. Matt is like, I'm going to just go die now. Excuse me, please. I need to go die of embarrassment.
This is another case where I think, or I want to mention Matt using his vocabulary to describe the situation. Because Beslan starts going in about this like, oh, you know, I'm really happy for you. Oh, you think I'm upset? Of course I'm not. And then Matt is out the door before he realizes it. He's stumbling out the door like, I need to get the fuck out of here. This is I was prepared for the situation where he tried to fight me over this. To Matt's registering of his trauma, he's like, if anything third party happens to me with respect to this that is negative, it's going to be the people are going to be blaming me for it. He certainly did not expect for everyone to be like, this is great, this is how it's supposed to happen. Because again, as we've discussed, in a bajillion ways, it's not.
Yeah, he never in a million years would have expected this. Like, he would have expected Nynaeve and Elaine to get on board with his side of things before he expected this.
Absolutely.
This is so... He wouldn't have even considered this as being impossible. It's so far outside of what he would expect. But the good thing about it is that it makes him behave randomly.
Yeah, which is what we need.
Which means that his Taviran can kick in, and we can start actually getting the pig-kissing bull, as Leslie would call it. My favorite name for the bull ever.
The pig-kissing bull? Is that what she said?
Yeah, she because it takes them so many books to go from discovering that the bull exists to getting it, and she's like really impatient for it, as I recall, in her episodes about that.
Well,
she's like, they finally got the pig-kissing bull!
It is about 1 million pages of wandering. We're in book 5. The weather just got warm. When do they use it? Book 8? Yeah. I think? Because book 9 is winter?
Yeah, book 8, because they dash out through the door, through the gateway, leaving Matt behind, and then it opens the book, more or less. It's like the first big event of that book.
Which is funny, because you'd think after all the build-up it would be a climax, but whatever. It's just turning the thermostat down.
Really dramatically, but yeah, basically.
Really dramatically, and in a way that freaks out the Forsaken.
Freaks out everybody. Honestly, that's one of the weirdest holes in that whole, like, using the bowl, is that they don't send word to anybody. And it's like every channeler in the world is freaking out right now. You think at least letting, like, your higher-ups know would have, made sense. Like, let Rand know, let Dwayne know, like,
Give him a quick heads up before you screw up all of Sidene and Sidar in a half a continent area.
Yeah, no big deal. But yeah, so Matt skedaddles because he's feeling extremely uncomfortable, and Nalesean shouts after him, like, where are you going? And Matt yells back over his shoulder a message that Nalesean garbles. Because Matt says, if I'm not back by tomorrow, tell them they'll have to find it by themselves. And when Nalesean tells the girls that message, it's like, Matt said he found it. I think that's what he said. It's hilarious how much he thinks he knows, and then he backtracks, and it's like, I don't know.
Well, and to be fair, I think Matt also is halfway across a tavern at this point, completely unaware of where he is and what he's doing, just trying to get the hell out of the situation. I mean, we talk fight or flight. He's in full flight from the city, basically, right now. And it's a tavern, right? It's a common room tavern. There's going to be noise. And he's basically sprinting towards the door. Half happens. That's a new word. Half happens to notice what's her name, Selene, leaving, and follows her, and just like over his shoulder is like, just time, tomorrow, find it.
For sure. And Nalesean is like, just like, Matt, what are you doing? Okay, bye. Like, yeah, it's hilarious how the girls are like, oh my god, where's Matt? And he's like, oh yeah, he found the bull. It's not what Matt said. That's what Matt's doing, but that's not what he said. So happens that he is going to go find the bull, but that's a pure coincidence. But yeah, so the reason that Selene takes off from there is because the Rianne sent her to go check on the storehouse, I guess, which she has been wanting to do every day that Matt has been sitting there. Which is, she's like, the urge comes with the morning and leaves at the night, and I don't know what's happening, and the words just popped out of my mouth, and
I really want to look at my closet. I just want to see if that closet's still there. Taviran.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, very much full Taviran acting on her. She is as little opportunity to make choices in this situation as a Taviran. She's completely in the throes of that. And they haven't seen Elaine and Nynaeve, but she wants to make provision for the kin to go farther underground than usual. And somehow checking on the storehouse has to do with that. I don't quite know how. I guess they're just checking to make sure that nobody's been there.
Let's make sure the door's locked. Did we set the alarm? Probably. I don't know. Let's just make sure.
Let's make sure we turned off the tea kettle.
I left the oven on. The oven terangri on.
Yeah. Yeah, it must just be to go to make sure that nobody has disturbed the room. That makes sense, because they were asking after a storeroom of things, and it's like, please tell me you didn't find it. Yeah, and so there's this whole concept of, like, they have strict rules, they don't quite call laws, and there's no harm in behaving like Aes Sedai, and that's just setting us up for the book's worth of meandering exposition about how the kin work.
Yes, it is meandering exposition.
It's honestly one of my least favorite arcs. Is not the concept of the kin, but the way that they get introduced in dribs and drabs, and it's all just this really petty back and forth. It's up there with the sea folk for me, of just being like, oh my god, cut to the fucking chase.
Yeah, I really like the concept of the kin. I think they fill a really great hole in the world, and I think that they really cover they make sense, and they're really interesting as a culture, but they are so dull and slow a lot of the time. Yeah. I would rank the Sea Folk as significantly more dull and slow. Like, you got me hyped up for magic pirates,
right?
And then they're just fucking bargainers who don't understand the basic premise of, if the world ends, you can't buy shit anymore. So,
and it's so
I'm
petty.
Getting ahead of myself here.
It's so petty. It's just women can do nothing but be bitchy, and it's oh my god.
It's derivative a little bit.
Anything else you want to talk about with that little ending bit?
Thank heavens for Taviran. And no, not really.
Okay, well, I'm going to be extra and read that entire POV to read us out, because Yay! I like it. Even though I don't like the general arc that it sets up, I still like it. Okay. From a window of the meeting room, Rianne watched Tylin disappear down the street toward the river. Some fellow in a bronze coat followed in her wake, but if he tried to impede her, he would find out soon enough that Tylin had no time for men, and no patience with them. Rianne was not sure why the urge had grown so strong today. For days it had come on almost with the morning and faded with the sun, and for days she had fought, by the strict rules they did not quite dare call laws. That order was given at the half moon, still 6 nights off. But today, she had spoken the order before she thought, and been unable to make herself retract until the proper time. It would be well. No one had seen any sign of those 2 young fools calling themselves Elaine and Nynaeve anywhere in the city. Thank the light, there had been no need to take dangerous chances. Sighing, she turned to the others, who waited until she took her chair before seating themselves. It would be well, as it had always been. Secrets would be kept, as they always had been. But still, she had no touch of foretelling, or anything of that sort, yet perhaps that overwhelming urge had been telling her something. Taviran. 12 women watched her expectantly. I think we should consider moving everyone who does not wear the belt to the farm for a little while. There was little discussion. They were the elders, but she was the eldest. In that, at least, there was no harm in behaving as Aes Sedai did. Spoilers, that's not how they ordered themselves.
Not at all. Not even a little bit.
Not the slightest. It's the funniest thing to me is how much they hold the Aes Sedai up on a pedestal and totally misinterpret everything about them.
You botched it. You did it better, kind of, but you botched it.
Yeah, they there's some strong improvements that the kin make.
I really prefer their structure over the ice. It's ridiculous that the simple fact that you're stronger means that you're more powerful. Not more powerful, that you're more politically powerful.
Yeah.
It's garbage.
Age is not the greatest metric either, but at least everyone gets a chance to move through the rankings with age.
You're going to get there eventually.
Unless you
probably.
Die, sooner.
Unless you die.
As it's channelers with healing abilities in particular, it's pretty low odds that you'll die, so...
And it occurs to me now that it actually does almost incorporate a little bit of the power equals political power thing. Because if you're a super good channeler, you're going to live for 900 years.
That's true. That's true, that to some extent strength is going to dictate how long you live. But there's more motion than with the straight power ranking.
Yes. There's flexibility there.
Yeah. And they have a bit more of a consensus finding. They do care to find consensus as much as they can. And Elise is not the oldest or the strongest, and yet is the most authoritative of all of them. So they're a little bit more flexible, but they think they're behaving like Aes Sedai, and it's fortunately you aren't.
Yeah. You missed, kid. Good effort, though.
Oh, wow. So we did it. We did the Festival of Birds.
That was a good discussion. I enjoyed it very much.
Thank you very much for coming on and helping me do that.
Yeah, thank you for having me. You know, I am really grateful to have been able to discuss this, all of this chapter. I think it was a lot of fun to talk about at the end of the day.
Yeah, for sure. It was a good exercise. Yeah, discussions I did not expect to be responsible for having just because I read these books. I hope that our audience got something out of that and that we could bring something of value. I'm sure lots of people skipped the episode for various reasons, but I hope that people who...
Nothing wrong with that.
Right, but I hope that people who did listen found something of value in that discussion. I certainly got a lot out of it. So that's really all that matters, is I'm here to have a good time, and if people like listening to it, then that's a good thing. Yeah, thank you so much for coming back and taking the time. And I know that, you know, your life is busy and full of stuff, so I'm glad you were able to carve out a few brain cells to cover this topic.
I wouldn't miss it. It is always a pleasure to be here on Watch Spoilers. Again, I mean, you guys got me into the world of podcasting media and the broader Wheel of Time scene. I wouldn't know anything about it if it weren't for you guys. So it's always just like Christmas for me to be able to come and share what little thought I might have with you. So thank you for having me. It's been a real pleasure.
It's wild being part of this thing now. I mean, I was just a fan like you, and now, you know, here I am. And there was a great thread on Twitter about like, you know, raising up diverse Watt voices. And there was a comment on that about how like we, Seth and Patrick, very much got a lot of podcasts started just by virtue of starting the trend of making content. And that's a really, really cool thing to like that happened, that there's so many podcasts out there that take inspiration from Watch Spoilers, and that I am now helping keep it going and like making it a thing. Not what I expected when I just started yelling at them randomly. I like literally found Watch Spoilers because they liked an Instagram post I made, and I was like, that's an interesting handle.
I know what a Watt is.
So random. And now,
that's how things go.
There's so many podcasts.
We fall into these holes.
So much content getting created and such an amazing community. I mean, we've got audience members like cross-pollinating back and forth, and you know, we're uplifting each other and making sure everyone knows when the cool events are happening, and when the show comes out, we can all like scream in like 25-part harmony, and it's really cool. We've developed a community that's bigger than just our immediate podcast community, right?
Absolutely.
Like the podcasts themselves have this larger ecosystem, and that's a delight.
Agreed.
I think
wholeheartedly.
I'm really glad that, you know, you're doing your thing and being part of that ecosystem out there. And
I like doing my thing. It's fun. I get to talk about books, and people listen to me talk about books. Right? That's all I've ever liked to do. I always liked reading and talking about books, and now people go like, I would like to hear your thoughts. And I go, why? I'm just a guy. Here I am. Right?
And then they're like, we would like to give you money for your thoughts. And it's like, but I'm not qualified.
You don't have
but
to do that.
Okay.
Seth says, yeah, same. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, it's wild. I'm literally making as much money podcasting as I ever did working at the pub or at the school library.
Oh, cool.
I know it's kind of a cool metric, but it's like, what? This is not what I went to college for. This is not what my career is supposed to be.
That's entertainment.
Yes, Seth, it's not much, but still, as someone who doesn't have a real career, you know, it's just wild. The whole thing's just wild.
Anything else before we wrap up?
I think that's it. Just everyone remember to go check out Wheel Takes if you're into hilarious and insightful first-time reader. Well, half first-time, half spoiler secretizing podcast.
50-50. If you know Wheel Weaves or Wheel Reads, we're like them, except we're blonde. And yeah.
Yeah, and really fun.
Thank you. I actually have to go record a Wheel Takes episode now.
Oh.
So,
I should definitely let you go then. Just not talk for 5 minutes between.
I like talking. Talking's fun. That's why I started a podcast. I like reading, I like talking. But, again, thank you for having me. It's been a real pleasure.
You heard about this?
No.
Yeah, apparently Audacity has been bought by a company that is basically installing the equivalent of spyware
Oh, fun!
in its next update. And apparently it doesn't happen until you update it, but it's a whole thing to like get analytics from what you're doing that is very against the open source freeware ethos. So there's apparently like, forks on GitHub to get older versions of it and all of that already. And it won't take effect until you update it anyhow. So, don't set it on too much fire, okay? You're okay.
I'm just gonna throw my computer out now. I think that's the rational thing to do.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, it's apparently a bit of a kerfuffle amongst the world of people who are techie and know things. And as far as I know, Reaper and Discord still don't like to play nice together. I haven't played with that yet, so I'm still using Audacity. But it doesn't update every 3 seconds like freaking Reaper does. Every time I open Reaper, it's like, download an entirely new version, so...
Audacity updates like once every 6 months. You know what does actually need to be updated if you have a Windows computer is Windows. Because someone who works for Windows posted like a 20-page document that was like, hey, there's this vulnerability in Nightmare Demon Print Spooler or something. Here's how people could exploit it to hack your computer. And then they accidentally posted it publicly. And so,
Awkward.
It was badly done. It was poorly managed on their part, but they patched it. They even patched Windows 7.
Oh man, we have some tiny little laptops that we got for school, and we use those as our like entertainment computers rather than our office computers. And the one, it constantly wants to update Windows, but it doesn't have enough like brain space to handle updating Windows.
It can't pull down the update to install it.
Oh my god, it's this little tiny laptop. It's like, I just want you for Spotify and Winamp. That is literally your entire purpose in life. But it wants to have all of Windows updated.
The little thin factor that couldn't.
It's awkward. Computers are fun. I don't have way too many computers. I'm not overprivileged at all.
I have as many as I need, and one of them doesn't work, so...
Yeah, I have one that I basically don't use. It's my Kindle from forever ago, and I keep being like, I'm going to charge it up and have it around for those 4 books and this other book that I got, and then I haven't opened it in forever. I've had it for like 8 years, but yeah, 2 laptops, a phone, and a Kindle. I'm like this, and they each one's successively smaller than the other because there's like the big laptop and then the mini laptop.
Should stack them up like wireless Wi-Fi bars.
Yeah, exactly. But it was when I did geology, the mineralogy class in particular. I mean, I needed a laptop for school in general, but particularly for the optical mineralogy class, we could like hook up our computers to the microscopes and like all this stuff. And it was like, I'm not bringing my expensive giant laptop to school twice a week. That's not, no.
That seems like a recipe for disaster in the long run.
Yeah. So just a little lightweight Asus that was like, $200 was much more practical and did the job just fine. And that's why I have really cool pictures of minerals for my Broken Earth podcast that I'm definitely getting back to any month now. A couple of people have joined that server recently, and I'm just like, fuck, I have to make content again. Satanis, yes, we're getting rid of Audacity, or we're getting a fork from GitHub for not the newest version of Audacity because spyware. Well, that's dramatic. Things that are not particularly open source philosophy aligned. Collecting data that's not necessary. But you're enough of a geek, you can probably figure it out better than I can. I think an article was posted here in the server like yesterday.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?